Who's the coolest off air? Like out of all the people that you know, who's the absolute coolest?
That's such a great question that I'm not going to answer, because whoever I didn't say would be so pissed.
I think you would say Rogan is one of them.
Would not.
Oh.
First of all, I don't know him off air.
Bill Maher has this thing that he likes to do with his own show, Real Time with Bill Maher, and also with his own podcast, the Club Random Podcast. Bill Maher loves to bring people onto his show, and then he gets absolutely embarrassed and obliterated by these people that come onto this show. This time, Bill Maher tries to talk negatively and down on Joe Rogan for being involved with Donald Trump, voting for Donald Trump, having Donald Trump on his podcast, etc. Let's get into this clip and find out what happens after Bill Maher tries to go after Donald Trump and Joe Rogan here live on Bill Maher's own podcast.
Become friends. You don't want to push that on anyone as a talk show host. You don't want to, the first time, hey, let's exchange numbers. No, but over time, it just happens. So that's a wonderful thing. And so some of them are celebrities and some of them are not. I mean, but they would all get along because they all think I'm great. So, you know, they have that in common. And so they must have good taste.
Who's the coolest off air? Like out of all the people that you know, who's the absolute coolest?
That's such a great question that I'm not going to answer, because whoever I didn't say would be so pissed.
I think you would say Rogan is one of them.
Would not.
Oh.
First of all, I don't know him off air.
If you enjoy content like this, then make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Oh, you guys have such good
but you guys have a good rapport.
I can't believe that.
I have good camaraderie with every.
You can see, and maybe I'm reading too much into this. Let me know in the comments if you think I am. But you can kind of see the jealousy in a lot of these people, right? Like Bill Maher was at first like, I'm not going to answer because whoever I said would be angry. And then whenever Joe Rogan is brought up, he's like, but clearly not Joe Rogan, right? Like he wasn't going to answer at first, but then when Joe Rogan's brought up, you can see the jealousy come out. You can see just the anger because Joe Rogan doesn't conform to what everybody else in Bill Maher's space conforms to. All the woke talking points, you know, he doesn't conform to what the woke cult tells him to do, which is why he got shunned from the woke cult. You can see the jealousy creep out there just a little bit, but it gets even worse.
Everybody I talk to.
Okay,
I
fair.
really do.
Fair.
I mean, I like Joe a lot. Do we agree on everything? No, he's going to vote for Trump, which I think is insane, but you know, that's him. Maybe it's you, and it doesn't make me like you one bit less. And I was having this argument with a very famous close friend of mine last night who believes he would not be friends with someone who votes for Trump, and I am like not on that page.
We had somebody on the show the other day, and one of the things they said to me is, well, think about how many miserable liberal people, you know, and my response was, think about how many miserable conservative people. I just think this whole idea of like you have to base your friendship and your ideas on a side is so foreign to it. I hate it too. And we get so much shit on our show for having everybody from every different thought process on the show. And like for Lauren and I can't imagine being put in a position where I have to decide who I'm going to be friends with based on their political ideology. I just think it's insane. Yeah. Some people will say, well, these people are actually harming people's lives and whatever issue that is, and they'll take it that far, but I just don't see it that way.
I mean, it's not untrue. I mean, this person was saying, you know, Trump, he's racist, and this thing with the Haitians, it's like, yeah, it is. That's not untrue, but it's also way more complicated than that. I mean, the Muslim mayor of that town, Hamtramck in Michigan, I think only Muslim majority town in America, endorsed Trump. The guy who asked for a Muslim ban.
So there's nuance.
Yeah, there's nuance. It's so much more complicated. And also, like, I know some of the people that this friend of mine that I was talking to know that we have in common who are Trumpers. And I was like, really? You mean you don't want to be friends with that guy anymore? And the answer is usually, oh, well, you know, it just really gives you pause. Like, really, I mean, maybe he's not your best friend in the world, but we have to cut off. And it's just and even if it was.
I do agree with what Bill Maher is saying. Obviously, this is the common sense take. The problem is, it's really hard. You know, you could see the jealousy creep out there whenever Joe Rogan was mentioned. And Bill Maher does this all the time with people that go on his show, Real Time with Bill Maher, or just people in general that he's talking about, like he did there with Rogan. It's hard to believe, number one, that Bill Maher actually lives by this thing that he's talking about here. I just the way that he talks about people who support Trump, I don't think there's any way that Bill Maher is friends with people who support Trump. I just don't think that's the case. But also at the same time, it's very hard to be friends with people who are liberals, who don't, who aren't voting for Trump this year. It's really hard, because if you're not voting for Trump, then you're just like completely brainwashed and probably insufferable. Like I've never really met anyone who is against Trump for this next election, who is voting for Kamala Harris, who isn't like insufferable about it. Everybody who supports Kamala Harris in this next election, their entire personality is built around the fact that they're supporting Kamala Harris. So it's really hard. Like I agree with Bill Maher here. You should be able to be friends with people that think differently than you. 100% you should. I am friends with a lot of people who don't care at all about any of this stuff. But it's hard to be friends with people who are Kamala Harris supporters, not because they're Kamala Harris supporters, but because of how they act outside of that. Same thing goes for Bill Maher. It's like, he's saying these things, and I don't think he puts it into action. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think he's putting it into action here.
Because if you thought you had the moral high ground, which you don't, it's just counterproductive, because you're going to have to talk to these people anyway. It's half the country, and they're not going away. They're not self-deporting. They're probably not going to change their views on a lot of stuff unless you talk to them. They're certainly not going to change at all if you don't talk to them. That much I can guarantee.
We talked about this on our show a little bit. I said, how we're basically 9/11 happened our freshman year of high school, but we were young. And I think our generation has watched a lot of, honestly, in my opinion, a lot of warmongering for the last 20 years. And I said, it's hard to even distinguish which side is which anymore. There's people on the left now that are fans of Dick Cheney. Like, if you would have told me people on the left would
and
be,
his daughter,
yeah, and that to me, it's so the line, the extremes have gone so far. I can't recognize which is which.
The thing we
anymore.
were talking about on that other show that we were doing. As soon as Bobby Kennedy said processed foods were bad, suddenly we all switched teams on that one. It's just amazing the way they will switch teams on a dime. And it's first of all,
it's ironic that that's coming from Bill Maher, because he's supposed to be, a liberal Democrat. They were always the people who were against the jabs, traditionally. And then as soon as left-wing people come out and say, as soon as Donald Trump comes out with a jab, it's like, at first, they had that famous video where Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom, all these people are coming out and saying, I would never take a Trump jab. I would never take a Trump jab. It's like, oh yeah, that's the traditional left-wing way of thinking. And then Joe Biden takes office and it's like, oh no, everybody needs to get this. The same thing that they were saying that they would never get in their life. Everybody needs to get this. In fact, it's like, you can't go into certain restaurants unless you get this thing. So it's funny how Bill Maher talks about that, where he's like, certain people say certain things, you immediately just flip on it, when Bill Maher does that same thing and has done that multiple times since 2020.
Kind of childish. I know you think you're the sophisticated ones. It's not really sophisticated to only see, your team, who's on your team. What can I learn that supports my team, or what I already know already? It's just not interesting to me. First of all, you're boring me.
Boring.
Don't bore me. Speaking of that, let's get more specific about what it is you're doing to each other that makes the sex better. Like, specifically. I want to know specifically.
All right, that's where we're going to cut it off, because Bill Maher always got to make this stuff weird, man. He's always going to make it weird. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you thought about what Bill Maher said there about Joe Rogan. You could tell he got very, very apprehensive, very jealous, in my opinion, of when Joe Rogan was brought up as the most likable person off air. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole Bill Maher statement and the stuff that he was talking about on this clip here. Like I said, I agree with what Bill Maher was saying, but Bill Maher, it's a very hypocritical statement from him, because I don't think he practices what he was preaching there at all. Let me know in the comments what you think about this whole Bill Maher clip in the comments.